Hey everyone, this is James Moffett with Liberty and Gun Rights Podcast. And I'm joined today with a guest speaker, Tim Elmer, Sightline Strategies. And Tim, I'm glad you're here tonight. And I don't know if you remember me or not, but back in February of 2012, I actually trained at Tommy Judy's range back when it was called Belt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what Belt stood for. However, I remember you being there, and you were one of the trainers. I believe I took the advanced conceal and carry class in 2012. It's hard to believe it's been that long. And do you remember that I got my hand got bit by the slide on the weapon that I was training with? I don't know if that was a Glock 19 or what weapon that was back then. But I got bit pretty hard, and I learned a very valuable lesson. I guess that's what training is all about, right? Uh, and I remember how y'all didn't make me feel stupid, and y'all were very calm and very assuring, and made me feel comfortable, which was, when you're around a whole bunch of guys, sometimes that's not what happens. Sometimes people can make fun of you or belittle you or laugh or carry on. And I remember succinctly that didn't happen. So that kind of helped me. And you were very patient with me, and I really appreciated that and still do. And that's why, one of the reasons why I will certainly give you a reference and refer people to you for training. And I guess it's called Shoot Logic now, instead of
Yeah.
Belt.
Yep. Unfortunately, just life being what it is, Belt, Tommy started up Shoot Logic, so he asked me to come on board with that. So we started Shoot Logic. It was his business, but it was after the end of Belt. And I do remember you out there when we called it the advanced. I think it was the advanced concealed carry, like you said.
Yeah.
I do remember. I don't remember the slide by it, but I remember you being out there. But yeah, it's Shoot Logic now. We started that in probably 8 years ago now ish, somewhere in
Right.
there. It wasn't that long after you came out there for the when it was Belt. It was just their initials, his family's initials.
Oh, I got
So
you.
yeah, that's all Belt was for. And then so I was with Shoot Logic and worked my way up basically to be the lead instructor, and then started Sightline Strategies when I wanted to do my own thing. But yeah, it's still called Shoot Logic now.
Right. Well, I've always been friends of yours on Facebook and followed your timeline or your Facebook feed, and I've certainly seen all the different things that you've been doing in the training industry, and you're always busy, getting training yourself. And I think that's always a good sign of a quality trainer in that they don't feel like they have arrived and that they are constantly getting training themselves. I mean, how can you train people under you or alongside of you that don't have your experience if you don't get some experience, right? And
Exactly.
so anyway, that's I appreciate that about you. And when I heard that you had this big event coming up, or this training seminar or whatever you call it, I was like, hey, why don't you get on my podcast and let's talk about training in general and firearms and Second Amendment and liberty, and you can tell people about whatever you want to tell people about. I'm gonna kind of let you take the floor and introduce yourself and tell people who you are and what you're about and what's going on.
All right. Well, first, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's awesome. I've actually never done an official podcast before, doing the whole Zoom thing, so it's pretty cool, man. I'm excited. But my name is Tim Elmer. I am the owner and lead instructor of Sightline Strategies LLC. I am based in Somerville, South Carolina, and I do all types of training, and to include hosting. My primary is handgun with a interest in the carbine rifle side. And what I primarily do is everything beyond CWP. So I basically have two levels of handgun right now. Baseline handgun is kind of my bread and butter. That is the first step. So for people that are interested, it is okay. You got your CWP, which I'm sure we'll get into later. CWP is not training. So it's you got your CWP. And some people are saying, okay, now what? I know this wasn't enough for me to carry, out and about on a regular basis. So that is what baseline handgun is for. And then the next level beyond that is accelerated handgun, where we get into the nitty gritty of target transitions, movement, really shooting and pushing the accuracy at speed. So it's a performance-based shooting. All of my training is performance-based, but that's what I do.
Very good.
Yeah, so I've been doing that for a long time. Started like you and I just talked about all the way back at Belcher. I can't believe that was 2012. You took me down a memory lane for a minute. Yeah, so 2012, and then I started Sightline Strategies all the way up to 2 years ago. So that's when I officially
Right.
started my own thing. Yep. And then going from there and just trying to grow the training community in South Carolina. That's something I'm pretty passionate about, is not only continuing my own training, but actually trying to show people, listen, there is a big world out there in regards to shooting, especially shooting, and then of course self-defense, medical, uh, unarmed combatives, things of that nature. I don't teach that, but that's why I host. I bring guys that have that experience in,
Sure.
and I bring them to the low country.
One of the things that I've always tried to illustrate or bring, shine some light on it is what you said earlier, is that your concealed weapon permit class, 8-hour class or less now, possibly, that's not weapons training.
Mm-mm.
And it's not designed to teach you how to efficiently and effectively carry a sidearm for self-defense, to protect yourself or your loved ones. It's basically geared towards, hey, these are what the South Carolina carry gun laws are. This is where you're not able to carry, and this is where you are able to carry. And this is the importance of you having, self-defense training of some sort. And, I always tell people that your brain, the gray matter between your ears, is the most powerful weapon you have at your disposal.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and you can have other non-lethal weapons at your disposal as well, which is not really within the scope of this podcast episode. But you can carry a flashlight, you can carry your sidearm, you have to have a quality holster, hopefully a retention holster, level 1, level 2 retention holster, to keep people from yanking it out of your holster and using it on you, God forbid. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so um, buying a firearm and going to your CWP class and shooting a man-sized target, 30 or 40 feet away from you, and hitting that target enough to qualify to get your CWP, and then people take their firearm with them and go, okay, well, I've got my CWP, now I can carry concealed, and they go put the gun in the nightstand, and it's like their training's over, and it's like a magic talisman that's going to keep the boogeyman away. And I'm like, no, that's not necessarily correct. There are more things to learn when it comes to the self-defense mindset, and um, so it's good that you have a couple more steps of tiers of training that people can take.
Yeah, I think it's very important and to do so in a practical and performance-based manner. And what that means is to put everything on the timer. Everything works in theory until it's opposed or put on the timer. Reality, like you just said, people treating it like a magic talisman, is people forget how fast these encounters happen. A violent encounter is violent. It's generally going to be very fast. It's going to be very surprising. And most people, including myself, you and I, even though we have had some training more than the average Joe out there, it's just a reality that things happen very, very quickly. So we need to train for that standard. So that's why we have put everything on the timer to be as fast and as accurate as possible. Because if we can't do it on a beautiful range day, what makes us think we can do it, on the worst day of our lives? One thing that I do try to impart on my students, I'm not a hyper tactical guy or anything like that, but what I try to impart on people is, we say it's the worst day of our lives if you have to draw the gun, but what we need to talk about is the other variables along with that, right? What's going to happen is you're more than likely had a bad day at work. you're getting the bread and the milk after a bad day at work. You argue with your wife. Your kids did something stupid at school, so you're gonna have to go home and discipline your kids, something like that. And then on top of that, you're tired, exhausted. It's been a 60-hour week, and then because you weren't paying attention because of all of those life variables, that's when it happens. So that's why we have to train to a higher standard when it's a beautiful range, 70-degree day on the range. For when those real life variables happen, we actually can make or get the job done. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And situational awareness is very, very key when it comes to hopefully staying out of those situations, or at least putting yourself in an advantageous position to defend yourself, or to, I mean, that, best case scenario is get out of it. You never want to get into a gunfight. You never want to be forced into a corner where you have to use deadly force, in defense of life. And, obviously that's why we train, right? If you do get backed into a corner, you're in a parking lot, somebody jams up you, gets close to you within that 20-foot rule, they get 15 feet from you, and all of a sudden you're in a fight for your life. That's an ugly scenario, but and I think that your common Joe, or Jolene, whoever it might be, your common husband, housewife, student, whoever it might be, they're wandering around, they're going from Walmart to the parking lot, they're going from the mall to the parking lot, they're focusing on whatever it is they're focusing on, their iPad or their iPhone 15 or whatever it is, and they're not paying attention to their surroundings. And unbeknownst to them, there could be a predator out there watching them to see if they're an easy mark. And if you're an easy mark, well, unfortunately, this is where that training is going to come in handy. And to me, the first training is, or the first point to illustrate is, get your head out of social media. Pay attention when you're sitting at a red light in your car. Don't always put your head in your lap looking at your phone. Look around you. Look at the crosswalk. Look at the people next to you and the cars next to you. Is somebody walking up on you? Are you looking in your side mirror, your rear view mirror? Are you aware of your surroundings and what possible danger could be very close to you? And we don't want to scare people, and we don't want them to think that the boogeyman's right around the corner at every breath that we take. But I mean, all you have to do is turn on the 6 o'clock news, and you see all these shootings that are happening, home invasions, drug deals gone bad. The police are taking, stolen guns off of drug dealers and stuff at traffic stops and all of that. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And just beyond situational awareness is people need to understand that all of these things, what I was trying to say earlier, are variables. These variables slow you down. So that's why we need to train to a standard, to a time standard, and do whatever we can in a practical manner and base it around performance. So what I mean by that is, if you think going to the range and having a 2.5-second draw is good enough, I would highly disagree with that statement. That is something that can be worked on through your own time, dry fire, not even necessarily going to the range, and then work that time down accordingly through improvements in technique. So that's what we need to look for as well. Is it's not just the situational awareness itself, it's about understanding the variables and how slow we can be, or we have the possibility to be, when we're out in the real world, so to speak. We're out and about on our daily lives.
right. All right. I'm sure you're familiar with the OODA loop, or whatever
Oh
they
yeah.
call it. Can you, from a high level, can you speak to that? As to, in other words, the mental gymnastics that people go through when all of a sudden they find themselves in a life-threatening situation?
Well, the OODA loop, what it stands for is observe, orient, decide, act. It's a loop that came up with an Air Force pilot by the name of Boyd. What I would do is actually refer you to the books of Boyd, anything by Boyd. I think it's Charles Boyd. Boyd is his last name.
Right.
Some other familiar books that I would tell people to go read would be Varg Freeborn, Beyond OODA, and Extreme Violence. So any of those books like that would better explain that concept.
I got you.
I don't want to do those guys a disservice. I understand what it
Oh,
means.
sure.
So, but I would much rather point people to the people that have either direct experience with it, that came up with it, or can explain it at a much deeper level. I'm a big reader, so I'd rather give you guys the
Oh,
resources to go read
sure.
as well.
It's any resource that you can point people to is excellent. But the only reason I brought that up is that because I know that when you're common Joe, housewife or office worker or whoever, college student, when they are faced with a oh shit moment, their mind is struggling with what's going on. You know,
Mhm.
they don't, unless they've had your kind of training, they're not going to engage instantaneously. They're gonna have a few seconds of, doubt and, oh, is this really happening, or why am I in this situation? And they're gonna have a lot of thoughts racing through their mind that's eating away precious response time, right? So I think it's good that it's like the 20-foot rule. You don't want anybody to get any closer than that, and further away if you can stop it, right? If possible, either by commanding them verbally to get away from you, or you physically moving away from them, putting stuff, a car door or a car or a truck or an object between you and them to kind of slow the situation down. So, but anyway, one of your talking points, you said training is evolving. It isn't enough to take one class and then be good. So, thinking about your common Joe person that's out there that doesn't have law enforcement training, doesn't have the kind of training that you have, um, explain why it's important, for people to get a little more serious about training with their firearm.
Couple of things about that. Put up that talking point was one, I think that we need to try, if we have the ability to put our hard skills on a level that we're not thinking about it. Because again, going back to what we talked about earlier, are all of those variables come into play. And again, of course, that day happens, you may have your wife, a loved one, a child with you. You may have other things going on that you have to think about, along with possibly presenting your firearm and or shooting another person in self-defense. So if we put those hard skills, the draw, lining up your sights, whether it's a dot or your irons, pressing the trigger without disturbing those sights, those need to be done on a level where you're not thinking about it. They just happen. And I think a lot of people overestimate their ability to do so in a consistent, reliable manner. So that's one thing there. Another thing there is, just within the last 2 years, as long as I have been doing this, so much has changed, excuse me, in the training and the practical performance level of training. So what I mean by just taking one class is, you can't just take one class and be like, okay, I took a class, I'm good. The way that I structure my classes, and most reputable instructors, in my opinion, is we give you homework. You're not just going to come to the range and do some drills. You're going to actually learn skills, and then you will be given homework so you can continue to improve on your own through the use of dry fire. So, God forbid if that thing happens, you're not thinking about the draw. You're not thinking about clearing your cover garment. You're not thinking about those things. You're thinking about what you need to think about, which is the threat or taking care of your loved ones, which is the much more important part, in my opinion. The shooting is not the important part. That is something that needs to be done on a level of what's called automaticity. It's the same thing when I go shoot at a competition or any competitive shooter, even at the local level. The guys, most of the time, mid to high levels, they're not thinking about the shooting. They're thinking about their stage plan. I got to go here. I got to go here. I've got to reload here. I've got to shoot these targets in this order. Those are the things they're thinking about. They're not thinking about the shooting itself. So that's what we need to be doing. And that's why I don't think that one class is not necessarily enough. And I think that it's not much to ask to take one class a year, possibly, just one day class a year for most people, just to keep up with trends or anything like that, at the very minimum, if not outright just compete or something along those lines.
How do you feel about IDPA or the USPSA, organizations that provide a environment or a platform for people to shoot? Do you think that is a possible? Does that lend towards training as well?
Absolutely. I am a huge proponent of competing. I compete as often as I can. I used to shoot IDP a lot, but now I shoot USPSA a lot. But find a local match here in South Carolina in the Low Country. We could literally shoot a match, either IDPA or USPSA, every weekend. And most of the time you can shoot twice a week. So you could go shoot USPSA on a Saturday. That following Monday, you could be somewhere shooting IDPA at an indoor range somewhere. I think
Right.
those skills translate very well to a defensive encounter. It's the same thing. Shooting is a big umbrella. So a lot of people try to separate us into the whole competitive side and then the defensive side. But the reality is it's all the same. The skill is the exact same. You still got to draw the gun properly. You still got to grip the gun properly. Still do all those things like line up your sights, like I just talked about, press the trigger. That is happening whether you are doing it for points or for life. It's the same exact skill. So it's incredibly useful. I think there's a ton of value there to go out and compete in some type of shooting competition. There's a ton of them out there.
Right.
I'm just a huge, huge proponent of competitive shooting. Last but not least, competition makes you better. I don't care what it is. It's shooting, anything you can think of. Competition makes you better. So go compete.
I got you. I don't know if you know Roy Freeman or not, but he's a friend of mine, and he's been a member of Palmetto Concealed Carry for a decade or longer, and he's been trying to get me into IDPA over the years, and for some reason I haven't. And I have several reasons why I haven't. It has nothing to do with IDPA in and of itself. I guess I guess I kind of feel like that I would I don't know, not necessarily make a fool out of myself, but that I would be embarrassed at my not being as fast as others, or as accurate as others, or whatever, whatever self-doubt crap that's been going through my head about it.
That's valid. I hear that all the time too, because I also try to get everybody in there. And yeah, I do know Roy. Roy actually came to one of my classes not too long ago. Came to baseline handgun a while back.
Okay.
But but that's a valid concern. I can assure you, though, that is nothing to worry about because nobody else is going to care. They're worried about their own shooting and worried about their own, stage plans and things like that. Go, because I can assure you, if you do it, yeah, the first match, because you don't know the rules and things like that, it's probably going to be kind of rough, but I can promise you, you'll have a ton of fun. And if
Okay.
I know you, if I remember you correctly, like you're gonna look at that and you're not gonna let that stand. You're like, you know what? I'm gonna be back. I gotta get better. And so you're gonna get hooked. And it's just like I said, one Saturday a month. But even that one Saturday a month, you're gonna have that attitude of being like, I had a blast. I got to hang out with Roy for all morning, and I got to get some shooting in and do it not just standing statically at a range. I got to move and do different targets, and I actually had to identify, shoot, no shoot, things like that. I
Right.
think you're addicted. I think you should try it.
Okay. Well, that's encouraging. Maybe I'll
Don't worry
go.
about it. Don't worry about it. Just do you. Do you. Literally just I wish you could come out to another class because that's what I talk about too, is just worry about you and those skills. Don't worry about how the scores fall. You are just there to have fun and get some shooting in.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest concerns I have is I'm not as ambulatory as I used to be. You
Hmm.
know, I'm older now, and I'm into my 60s, and I'm just, you know, I guess I'm don't want to get into a clumsy physical misstep situation and wind up falling on my face, or, you know, and I guess it's, like I said, it's just self-doubt creeping up in my mind and giving me excuses for why I shouldn't go, and I need to stop doing that. And I'm
Yeah.
and I'm and I'm being transparent here and vulnerable because I want other people in our listening audience that may be my age, maybe, elderly or senior or whatever you want to. I don't know when that happened. At some point, I became a senior, and I'm like, the 12-year-old kid in me was like, when did this happen? But I physically I can't do what I used to could do, right? I mean, 12 years ago, I could move a lot better than I can now, right? So
Yep.
you just have to know what your limitations are and do what you can to. It's like, I don't have to run from stage to stage. I can walk quickly, but pay attention to what I'm, you know, aiming at, and make sure that I'm hitting the target I'm supposed to be shooting at, right? So slow and efficient is better than fast and reckless, I guess. I mean, you tell
No,
me. I'm just talking
I
here.
think you're on the right path of that. Exactly what you should be doing is just going to do what you can do to the best of your ability. That's it. So regarding you being a mobility, no joke, at both IDPA and USPSA, I have literally gone to matches with people where I have seen them step up to the line wearing oxygen. And they just do what you just said. They walk the stages. I'm not kidding. I've
Yeah,
seen it
with
and I love
oxygen,
it.
huh? Well, I'm a
I
little bit better than
love it.
that.
Yeah. I have seen a little old lady, I kid you not, at an IDPA match. She shot it one-handed because in the other hand, she was walking around on her cane. Not kidding. Nobody cares. Get out and shoot. Number
I
two,
got you.
especially at the local level, if there is something that, a stage design has something where you just don't feel comfortable doing for your own safety, let the RO know, and you may have to take a penalty hit, but they'll make accommodations for you.
I got
Most
you.
of the time, that's few and far between, though. So,
Right.
I mean, there's things there. As long as you communicate with your RO or your match director, you're going to be okay.
Okay. So we've already talked about, is competition good for the defensive practitioner? I think we've kind of covered that pretty well. How effective is dry fire and what is it?
Dry fire is the act of doing everything that you do with the gun that you think you have to go to the range, is doing it with an empty gun. All right. So what you want to do is have your own routine of emptying the firearm, your draws, reloads, your stoppages, so you can get dummy rounds, your target transitions, your movement. All of that can be done in the comfort of your own home, in your AC or in your heat. You do not have to go to the range and shoot a case of ammo to get really, really good. Most of your world-class shooters that you see up there on YouTube, any of the guys, any of them, Ben Steger, Rob Latham, Bob Vogel back in the day, those guys, their dry fire dominates their live fire practice, or it dominates their firearm practice. So that's what it is. It's an incredibly effective tool for you to get better. And I preach it again at all of my classes. And we do every drill. We also do dry because I want you to be able to see that dry fire practice is effective. You use live fire practice to validate your dry fire practice.
I got you. So building muscle memory is important.
Yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, generalization.
How often should someone practice?
As often as they can. If you are a little crazy like I am and love this stuff and live for it, I've got a gun in my hand literally 6, 7 days a week, at least 15 minutes a day doing some type of dry fire practice. Even if I go live fire practice, I do dry fire practice.
Okay.
Realistically, for most people, I think that 3 days, 10 to 15 minutes, 3 days a week is very, very useful. It's realistic, and you'd be surprised at how good you could get if you're doing it properly.
Cool. Now, what do you think about these? You can buy these rounds that are like laser tipped, where you can, empty out your firearm. And you put one round in the chamber, and it paints
Yeah.
a picture on a smartphone or a card or whatever that you can somehow connect to your smartphone, and it tells you how well you're doing. Do you recommend those sort of products?
No, I really don't. I think they can be kind of gimmicky. They can be price prohibitive. Dry fire, the beauty of dry fire is it's free. And also, if you're paying attention to the right things in regards to manipulating your gun, that's especially something like grip, that's what you should be paying attention to versus just a slow trigger squeeze or a laser hitting a particular spot on the target. There's a lot of other things that you should be working on, in my opinion, versus buying something like that.
Okay. Physically handling the firearm correctly,
Correct.
gripping it the correct way. Gotcha. Gun owners are not the same as shooters. What does that mean?
What that means is guys that just want to have a bunch of guns in their safe, cool, man. It's America. I love you. But don't say you're a shooter and don't say you have the same skills as a guy. That whole saying, beware that man with one gun. But that man's got, his slide is stainless, his Glock is stainless because he's drawn it from a holster so much. That's a guy you need to pay attention to. So that was just me just kind of joking around with you. Guy, I want to encourage people to stop saying training's so expensive, but you're the same guy that just bought a $5,000 1911. Like, training's not expensive. You just wanted to buy another toy.
Right, right. I got you. One of your talking points was hard skills to free up the mind for other things. I think you kind of covered that though already.
Yeah, we circled back on that. And it all types into where we started at. It's just having the skills to where you're not thinking about it. It should be on a level where you're not thinking about those skills. There's other things you got to be paying attention to.
Right. As in what? How to escape, how to save your life,
Yep,
life of your
anything.
family.
Anything, even in the competitive environment. Both, again, we talked about that umbrella. The same skills, you'll see it at a match where if a guy is worried about his grip and his sight picture, he's never going to shoot as fast and accurately as the guy that's done the work and is shooting on a level of automaticity. Same thing on the defensive side. If you've got a child with you or you've got a fight on your hands, if you're worried about gripping the gun, finding your sights, or you're like, oh, I can't find my dot, that's a problem, right? You're
Sure.
worried about the wrong thing.
I got you. And last but not least, you got a bullet point that says books and other materials. You kind of mentioned a couple of books when we talked about the OODA loop and all that.
Yeah, Varg
What other
Freeborn,
books?
Boyd. Yeah, some of the best books out there are some of your dry fire books. Anything from Ben Steger, Steve Anderson, back to the dry fire discussion. I probably should have put that in the speaking points. When people say you can only do so much in dry fire, I disagree with that. I wish I could show you, but I mean, here's one right here. You see how thick this book is. I don't know if you can see how thick that is.
Yep.
This is
Yep.
from Ben Steger. This is just one book. I have got 5 dry fire books from Ben Steger. So, he's a world champion. I keep mentioning him, but he's a multi-time world champion. So if he can write 5 books just on dry fire when he's getting ready for, world championships, then there's plenty to do with dry fire. But just try to immerse yourself. There's so much to learn out there. Again, to get better and to keep learning, you don't necessarily have to go to the range. That's what I'm hugely passionate about. There's so many good podcasts. I'm glad you brought me on yours. I hope yours keeps growing. Um, to listen to people talk about training and where to get training and Second Amendment subjects. Anyway, Steve Anderson, I was rambling there. I apologize. Ben Steger, Steve Anderson, um, anything about training and learning. There's a lot of great books out there about habits. Any book on that is going to really help you understand what you're doing with your firearm.
What about YouTube? Are there any good YouTube videos that you recommend? Or do you
Yeah,
recommend you stay away from YouTube?
there's YouTube has actually gotten a lot better. Yeah, there's a lot of garbage out there, but that's like any subject. You know how it
Oh,
is.
sure.
You could look up car stuff and you got some guy trying to teach you how to do something weird and you drive, you're like, yeah, right, I'm going to blow myself up. But yeah, anything from Ben Steger, Rob Latham, JJ Rakaza. If you look up pretty much any high level USPSA shooter, you pretty much can't go wrong on that end. I got to give him credit. If you ever hear of T-Rex Arms, Lucas Botkin with T-Rex Arms, the man's got a encyclopedia of videos that are really good. Everything from actual hardware to skills and things like that of what to look for. So there's some good stuff on YouTube if you're just very careful with um, what to look for. It's like anything else. What I would tell you is cross-reference it. If certain guys are mentioning each other and they seem to be shooting at a high level, that's usually you've got a clue there. If they're not
Right.
doing anything, it's just and they're only doing one thing all the time, then you probably want to move on.
Right. Right. Well, that's good. So and I'm probably going to hit you up later on, maybe an email or on Facebook Messenger, and get you to give me those names because I'm not going to remember them, and so that way I can actually add that to my repertoire of resources. And so, what? Tell me about the. I saw that you were advertising in some of the Facebook gun groups about your upcoming training event. Can you tell everybody about when it is, where it's at, what they need, what do they need to do to register, blah, blah, blah.
Sure. Well, thank you. My next class is baseline carbine. That is not a basic class. It is just a standard of or setting your own baseline of skills. That is November 26th. It's the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I have another class December 16th, which is my accelerated handgun, which is my more advanced handgun class. To register for those, you would want to visit my website, sightlinestrategiesusa.com. If you just go into the register and store tab, those will be listed there. And then if you look out shortly, I will be launching my 2024 schedule. Can't believe we're already talking about that. but I'll be listing that here shortly.
Here, let me get to a browser, and so
Sure.
I want to bring it up so people can see it. What's
And
it
I train
called?
out of,
Sightline?
yep, Sightline Strategies USA.com.
Would it help if I could Sightline? I'm not typing it right. Sightline Strategies. Everybody's laughing at me now. Oh, here we go.
Nope, not that one. That's the business one. That took you to Sightline Strategies USA.
Cool. Let's do this.
Yeah,
Sight.
hopefully it pops up. It's.
Huh?
I said hopefully it pops up. I know it's live.
Incorporated?
LLC.
That one. There you go.
There you go. Number one on Google, baby.
Yeah, there you go. I just
There we
want
go.
people that are watching the video portion of this podcast to be able to see what they're looking for, right?
Yep.
So
And that,
sightlinestrategiesusa.com.
yep. And that picture there of the range is where I train. I train at Live Fire Training Academy in
Yeah,
Cottageville. So we got a beautiful range. The greenery right there is 100 yards. That open area is now open. It's 200 yards. So we're one of the only facilities, to have that kind of length in the low country.
right.
But yeah, so January, I'll go ahead and tell you, since it's on a podcast, I'll go ahead and tell you I am planning on doing a low light baseline class in January. So if you're interested in low light handgun training, that's what we'll be doing then.
I bet that'd be interesting.
Yeah, so that's where I really concentrate, especially on handheld light use and doing so with various lighting conditions.
I got you. I got you. All right. Well, very good. Well, I certainly appreciate you coming on our podcast and sharing your passion with regards to training and Second Amendment and liberty and gun rights and all of the above. And who knows? Maybe one day I'll take a class at will take one of your classes and show up and shock you.
Come on, I'd love to have you. I really would. It'd be like good old times, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you so much for having me on it. I really appreciate it. It was my first podcast and everything like that. So I had a blast and it was great catching up with you. I would love to do it again. But again, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. And if not if, but when I have you um, on as a guest speaker again, maybe we can drill down into some specifics, some different training specifics, and you can talk about specific methodology or tactics or whatever you want to call it. Like, I'm always looking for good guest speakers that can talk about firearms training, anybody that's involved in the Second Amendment fight. Like I'm trying to get Roy to do an episode on reloading.
Hmm.
Take some video or pictures of some of his reloading equipment. So I'm always looking for subject matter experts in the Second Amendment and firearms industry. So I will go ahead and wrap this up. And let's see if I can find the okay. Oh, here we go. So much for being professional, right? Thank you for the privilege of your time. Our podcast is hosted on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Be sure to share our podcast with your Second Amendment friends, family, and coworkers. You can contact us at Liberty Gun Rights Podcast at proton.me. That's Liberty Gun Rights Podcast at proton.me. Thank you for listening to today's episode, and goodbye for now.